Blind Guardian from Krefeld, Germany was originally formed as Lucifer's Heritage in 1984 by guitarists Andre Ulbrich and Marcus Dirk, Hansi Kirsch on vocals and bass, and drummer Hans-Peter Frey, although by their first show, Thomas Stouch would be on drums. This lineup would record a 5-track demo in 1985 titled Symphonies of Doom. Symphonies of Doom is super raw, as you might expect, and goes mostly in a speed metal direction with very straightforward vocals from Hansi. But the musicianship is already great, and there's a high-energy, aggressive attitude with some cool guitar passages, although overall it feels like the band is a little more focused on speed than melody at this point. The following year, Marcus Dirk and Thomas Stouch would leave and be replaced by guitarist Christoph Tyson and returning drummer Hans-Peter Frey. This new lineup would record the second Lucifer's Heritage demo, Battalions of Fear. This one shows immediate signs of growth, with intricate, powerful songwriting that showcases more melody to go along with the blistering speed. Still very much in a speed metal vein, but there's so much more creativity on this one with some awesome proto power metal touches. Following the Battalion's demo, Thomas Stouch would return to Lucifer's Heritage after Peter decided to leave, and guitarist Marcus Seipen would also join, replacing Christoph Tyson. The band would sign with German indie label No Remorse Records in 1987, and they'd begin recording their debut album with producer Calais Trapp in a real studio. The only problem, though, was their somewhat misleading name.
A lot of people had a misconception about our music. They thought we were doing black metal because of the Lucifers in the name, and when they heard the band's name, they refused to even check it out and listen to the music because they thought that's something that I don't want to listen to. So we were aware of the fact that we needed a different name.
Inspired by the Fates Warning record Awaken the Guardian, they choose the name Blind Guardian and release their first album, Battalions of Fear, in 1988. Battalions of Fear maintains the overall speed metal direction of the second Lucifer's Heritage demo, and is made up mostly of cuts from the two demos, including the instant classic Majesty, which contains one of the band's earliest Lord of the Rings references, the instrumental Trial by the Archon, and Wizard's Crown, previously titled Halloween. Run for the Night is also great, as well as the title track, which is a bit of a unique entry in the Blind Guardian catalog with its political lyrics. And while it is, again, speed metal at its core, there are some Halloween-inspired elements at play as well, with sophisticated solos and uplifting guitar passages. The new tracks include a second instrumental and 2 speedy numbers, Guardian of the Blind with lyrics about Stephen King's It, and The Martyr, which has to do with the crucifixion of Jesus. The honing of those older tracks and the overall tone of the album was due in no small part to producer Calais, who taught the band respect for studio time and suggested tuning their guitars down half a step for a fuller sound. Blind Guardian would get right back in the studio with Calais the following year for their second album, Follow the Blind. Overall, this one is along the same lines as the first album, although it's a bit heavier and thrashier, a direction inspired by the band listening to thrash bands like Testament. But even though the band themselves have apparently expressed a dislike for this album, it's just as good as the first for me, with tremendous songwriting and excellent melodies. While the cover of the album is very Lord of the Rings, many of the tracks here seem more influenced by Michael Moorcock's Eternal Champion, with several of the sci-fi characters' many identities being called out directly in the track Damned for All Time. For all time, who am I? Once I've been taught paradise. I was Eric, I'll be Coron, I'm the prince of first of life. Now I'm nothing, wait for someone, wait for Ilya, now I'm a moon. And track 6, Fast to Madness, covers probably the most well-known version of the Eternal Champion, Elric of Melnibone. But even with a generally thrashy style on this album, much attention is paid to song structure and creating compelling compositions, like the instrumental Beyond the Ice. Plus, Kai Hansen, who had just left his band Helloween, also appears on the album, after hearing about Blind Guardian through Calais and visiting the studio.
But now we are marching against these gods. I'm the wings that I would change it.
And when Valhalla was ready, you and me considered the song to be the weakest song, and
Ever.
we wanted to the weakest Blind Guardian song ever, and we wanted to skip it.
Yeah.
We didn't want it on the album, but then from the playing time we had to take it because we didn't have any other material that we could choose.
We did not have, yeah.
And so we said, okay, then let's put this shitty Valhalla on the album.
After Follow the Blind, the band would decide to shift their style again to something more unique and progressive, investing what they'd made from the album in their own studio and new equipment, like a 16-track mixer, allowing them to extensively experiment with backing choirs and guitar instrumentations. They'd begin to develop this new sound on their third album, Tales from the Twilight World.
Mit der Follow the Blind haben wir uns schon abgehoben und haben eigentlich schon eine ganz andere Musik gemacht, also viel härter und da waren eher so Trash-Einflüsse mehr drin und mit der Tales haben wir, glaube ich, unseren Stil gefunden, so richtig. Also das ist genau die Musik, die wir machen wollen und die Platte ist schon ziemlich eigenständig, würde ich sagen.
While Tales still has the aggression and power of previous Blind Guardian albums, there's a more epic feel on this one, with even more elaborate compositions, like the opener, Traveler in Time, inspired by Frank Herbert's Dune series.
And I'm a million miles from home, traveler in time, knowing that there's no rhyme. Traveler in time, knowing that there's no rhyme.
An early example here of experimenting with this new direction is track 4, Lord of the Rings, a slow but powerful track with something of an early folk metal vibe, utilizing acoustic guitars and atmospheric effects.
Three former kings, all the elves high and light, 9 to the mortal, which cry.
And all this leads into a beautiful refrain, which I still love, even if it is a little too short. But again, the heaviness and even the speed at times is still there, like in Lost in the Twilight Hall, which features another Kai Hansen appearance. There's clearly more of a power metal style here overall though, highlighted by the sort of choir-style choruses that Blind Guardian would come to be known for. And not to mention, some absolutely fantastic solos.
heard so many things before. Because of our sound system, we were listening to the songs many times. It was a real difference to have everything recorded so detailed. We rearranged the songs, we even re-recorded some songs, like 3 different versions, to see if a part fits in or not. And so the songs were much better prepared when we recorded them in the Tales, and I think that's why the quality of the album is so much better.
Along with Dune and Lord of the Rings, lyrical themes include Steven Spielberg's E.T. and 2 whole tracks dedicated to the Tommyknockers by Stephen King. After the release of Tales from the Twilight World, No Remorse Records would declare bankruptcy, leaving Blind Guardian without a label. Luckily, No Remorse had a distribution deal with Virgin Records, who ended up taking on Blind Guardian.
Also letztes Jahr ist unsere Plattenfirma pleite gegangen und daraufhin, da wäre No Remorse Records unter der Leitung von Charlie Rönne. Und daraufhin haben wir uns dann mit einigen anderen Plattenfirmen unterhalten und haben uns letztendlich für Virgin entschieden. Und da sind wir nun, ja.
Und wie fühlt ihr euch da?
Ja, bis jetzt wohl, aber wir haben auch noch keine Aktionen mit dem gemacht. Wir wollen die nächste LP erst wieder im November aufnehmen und werden dann sehen, ob die Firma die richtige Wahl war für uns.
Virgin was really giving us complete 100% free hand about the songwriting, and they released whatever we gave to them. So we had a really great deal there with the Virgin Germany and these guys. They accepted us like we were, and they said that is our metal band, and let's see what we can do.
This creative freedom with Virgin would lead to the 4th Blind Guardian album, Somewhere Far Beyond, released in the summer of 1992. This one has a very loose concept about time-traveling bards who meet in the forest to share stories, and each of their stories is a track on the album. However, most of the songs are references to a book, TV show, or movie, so like I said, it's a pretty loose concept. But even so, the artwork by Andreas Marschall and the ballad-like introduction do a great job setting a specific tone, which somehow fits perfectly with melodic power metal. And it definitely feels like Blind Guardian's most ambitious album yet, with complex compositions in a variety of styles, along with even more uplifting, spirited solos. Somewhere Far Beyond is full of epic tracks and insanely catchy melodies. It also marks the band's first use of the term bard, which was inspired by Marcus and Andre playing the 1985 PC game The Bard's Tale. While Virgin did give Blind Guardian free reign during their recording session, they also didn't request or promote a single. The band pushed Theater of Pain as their suggestion, but apparently the label didn't see potential in it at the time. the track The Bard Song in the Forest would eventually get a music video in 2003.
When hours have gone by, I'll close my eyes in a world far away. We may meet again, but now hear my song. But the dawn of the night, let's sing the bard song.
In the Forest takes the folky minstrel feel of the Lord of the Rings track from the previous album and expands it into a more fleshed out song with an atmosphere that makes you want to visit a medieval tavern.
But the bard songs will remain. Tomorrow will take it away. The fear of today, it will be gone. You two are magic songs.
Even though the finished album was a breakthrough for Blind Guardian, especially in Japan, and allowed them to tour outside of Germany for the first time, they felt that Calais was resistant to experimentation and decided to seek out a new producer that could fully capture their sound. While traveling around Europe, they'd meet producer Flemming Rasmussen in Denmark, who'd already worked with bands like Rainbow and Metallica.
All the albums before with the same producer, Kalle Schwab, and he helped us a lot, but in the end we found out that we need something new, we need something fresh, and so we were looking for a couple of producers, and we found the perfect one in Flemming Rasmussen, who did the Metallica stuff. And we were looking from the first moment on for a person like Flemming, because he was the kind of person who could bring something new into the music and change the sound a little bit, which was really important for us, because all the old albums, they sound the same nearly. And so we wanted something more aggressive.
With that direction in mind, Blind Guardian would record their fifth album, Imaginations from the Other Side, in 1995. This is another fantastic album with powerful riffs and epic melodies expertly blended together. And the elaborate solos are just as epic, often with neoclassical touches. But along with the classical and folk metal sounds, that thrashy aggression is definitely still present as well. While Imaginations is full of outstanding power metal tracks, it also contains the acoustic ballad A Past and Future Secret, another folky melodic track in the style of the Bard Song.
One of the most melodic songs is A Past and Future Secret, which is an acoustic ballad, only with acoustic guitars, very big drum arrangements with Aber jetzt müsste was Pauken heißt.
A classical drum
Yeah,
instrument.
classical.
I don't know the word for it
Yeah.
either.
Very huge classical drums and march arrangements, all that kind of stuff. So that's the most calm number on the album, I guess.
This was the track that Blind Guardian wanted to shoot a video for, but Virgin chose Bright Eyes instead. It's a pretty abstract video, but it's apparently about a kid who isolates himself from the rest of the world. I'm guessing so no one can tell him he's sitting too close to the TV while playing video games again. Although something like a Past and Future Secret would have showcased Blind Guardian's unique style more explicitly, Bright Eyes is still a great track, and perhaps a bit more accessible. We'd get another video the following year though, when Blind Guardian released a weird cover of the 50s pop hit Mr. Sandman as a single. It's a really bizarre choice for a cover, and the video is just as bananas. It takes place in a kid's bedroom where we see Blind Guardian on his TV, inexplicably dressed in drag as the Andrews Sisters.
Don't have nobody to call my own. Please turn on your magic beam. Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream.
But before you have time to ask too many questions, Pennywise jumps out of a box.
Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream. Make her the cutest that I've ever seen. Give her the word that I got her over. And tell her that lonesome nights are over.
The creepy clown starts terrorizing the kid, and after throwing his bed sheets at the personification of nightmares, the little boy thinks for a moment that he's gotten rid of him. But then, 3 more clowns show up.
Mr. Sandman, bring us a dream. Give her a paradise with a tongue and a queen. Give her a lonely heart like Pagliacci. Not so wavy hair like Liberace.
I simply did not like the video idea. We were convinced, to find that video attractive because we were told we would get heavy rotation, which was not the case. Of course, I'm a Stephen King fan, but Clowns and Andrews Sisters, it didn't work.
This cover of Mr. Sandman was part of the Forgotten Tales, a compilation of covers and bonus tracks released 2 months later. But for their next LP, Blind Guardian would decide to go for a full concept album. They'd consider a couple different ideas, including The Legend of King Arthur, and the 1994 fantasy novel Rheingold by Stefan Grundy. But eventually they'd decide that the most fitting subject would be The Lord of the Rings, or more specifically its prequel, The Silmarillion. And in order to focus fully on the lyrics and songwriting of the ambitious project, Hansi would turn bass-playing duties over to session bassist Oliver Holsworth, as the band recorded their 6th album, Nightfall in Middle-earth. As the first first Blind Guardian album to be released in the United States, Nightfall in Middle-earth is excellent, with the effort put into the songwriting shining through in some absolutely epic choruses. And of course, the guitar work here is phenomenal as well, with virtually endless neoclassical power metal solos. Story-wise, there's a lot going on, and it's probably easier to follow if you're somewhat familiar with the source material. But the short monologues and musical interludes between tracks make it pretty easy to follow the various emotions throughout the album. Like one of my favorite tracks, Blood Tears, in which one character recounts being held captive.
Each night I cry and pray.
There's really not a weak track on the entire album, with far more standouts than I have time to cover here. In fact, the only possible negative you could even point to is perhaps the promo shot set up by Virgin Records.
And we all hated the idea, but we did it. And we did not feel confident about that. And the photos turned out good, to be honest, but we do not like to dress up, never.
Luckily, Blind Guardian got to wear their own clothes in the music video for Mirror Mirror, another excellent track off Nightfall. In 2002, Blind Guardian released their 7th album, A Night at the Opera. This one focuses even more on the orchestral and symphonic elements, which is bound to turn some listeners off. But while Nightfall is far more consistent to me overall, there's still a ton of fantastic stuff on A Night at the Opera, including Battlefield. The guitars are noticeably buried in the mix, which is unfortunate, but some of the songwriting here is phenomenal, with well-crafted arrangements and multiple standout passages. And it also has Under the Ice, possibly my favorite track off the album. But along with those killer tracks, there's also some I really love on here, like The Maiden in the Minstrel Night or Wait for an Answer, that take a little longer to get going, but are well worth the build. Overall, A Night at the Opera is very operatic, with sprawling, choir-backed melodies and big crescendos. But the speed metal isn't left behind entirely, with the track Punishment Divine upping the tempo. The album closes with a track that truly embodies Blind Guardian's direction, and then there was silence, clocking in at just over 14 minutes. With lyrics inspired by the Iliad and the end of the Trojan War, and then there was silence is a powerful blend of aggressive riffing and symphonic instrumentation. For many Blind Guardian fans, this is easily one of the band's best tracks, and A Night at the Opera is a solid album that pushes their power metal sound even further. However, some considered the album to be overproduced, with the music going too far in a more progressive direction. Thomas Stouch was one of those people, and he'd leave Blind Guardian in 2005. I left Blind Guardian because we had several personal and musical differences during the last 3 to 4 years. We wanted to prevent betraying our fans because not having the same vision for a band in its future, but still playing together only to have the same lineup, wouldn't have been true to our fans and also bad for Blind Guardian and me. Thomas would be replaced by Frederick Emke, and the band would move over to Nuclear Blast Records for their 8th album, A Twist in the Myth. Apparently, A Twist in the Myth is a fairly polarizing album among Blind Guardian fans, and it does play things relatively safe, but overall, I really like it. It doesn't reach the wall-to-wall greatness of Nightfall and Middle-earth, but it pulls back on some of the more grandiose orchestral elements while maintaining the powerful Blind Guardian sound. There are some so-so tracks on here for me, but most of the stuff ranges from pretty good to fantastic, with some excellent catchy melodies. And as usual, the guitars play a huge part in the uplifting, energetic side of the music with some super fun solos. What sticks out to you will depend on your personal taste, but I found this album really easy to listen to, with killer tracks on it like Carry the Blessed Home and Lionheart. And I also gotta give a shout out to Scalds and Shadows, the folky medieval entry on the album.
Songs I will sing of rules and ring. Just hand me my heart. This night turns into myth. Nothing seems real. You soon will feel the world we live in is another start. Dream in the shadows. Dream in the shadows.
A Twist in the Myth did get one video for Another Stranger Me, which seems to take place primarily in a detective's office where a sloppy drunk detective is trying to solve a case. I know some people really like this track, but it's just alright for me, and I personally think there are much stronger songs on the album. Blind Guardian would follow this up with 2010's At the Edge of Time. I like At the Edge of Time overall, but it did take me a bit longer to get into than A Twist in the Myth. There's still a lot I like about it though, and there are incredibly catchy choruses as always.
At the Edge of Time is a very epic and orchestral album, and I would say it combines all the qualities of what defines Blind Guardians. So it can be also seen as a sort of 60 minutes time traveling journey throughout all our careers.
There really is a range of Blind Guardian sounds on here, going from a very progressive style to the thrashy power of A Voice in the Dark, which was also the only track off the album to get a video. I think there are people that are a little higher on this one than I am overall, but it does sound great, and there are parts on every song I like. And of course, along with the faster stuff, we get a couple of folky medieval tracks in Curse My Name and the more ballad-like War of the Thrones.
All I ever feel is, all I ever see is, walls they fall when the march of the others begin. All I ever feel is, all I ever see is, rise and fall when the war of the throne shall begin.
Some parts just feel a little overblown to me, and At the Edge of Time isn't one of my top Blind Guardian albums. But then, a lot of stuff on here does work for me, like the album closing epic, Wheel of Time.
The saints I am the chosen, time I read the flame would grow and feel the heat I keep on breathing.
Bassist Oliver Holsworth would join Rhapsody of Fire in 2011, and Baron Courbois would take over, although he'd similarly be considered a session player for the band. His first album appearance would be Blind Guardian's 10th, Beyond the Red Mirror, meant to be a sequel to Imaginations from the Other Side.
On Imaginations, there are particularly two songs, Bright Eyes and The Story Ends, telling a story of a boy who's living in a world similar to ours, but he is supposed to be the chosen one for another world. And on Imaginations, we find this boy standing in front of a mirror, about to jump into this other world. And that's where we leave him with the album. Since it is a weird story, I decided that the boy decided not to jump and stayed in his world instead. And due to the decision, there were fatal consequences for both worlds. And we will join the boy, who has become a man by then, 20 years later obviously, on his quest to find the Red Mirror.
This one is along the same lines as At the Edge of Time for me. It's solid overall, and there isn't a lot to complain about specifically, but I just find myself checking out now and then, although the choruses always draw me back in. But much like At the Edge of Time, it seems there are many people who enjoy this album a bit more than I do, so it's well worth checking out to see how it works for you. Again, there are bits and pieces I like throughout the album, but overall, Beyond the Red Mirror just doesn't grab me the way other Blind Guardian albums do.
Say goodbye, my friend. Here's your promised end. Be a part of the grand parade. A long way driven. On and on, it's a grand parade. We're so sorry to say, it's all the same.
In 2019, Hansi and Andre would release a project called Legacy of the Darklands, a very theatrical album set during the 30 Years' War in the 17th century. I won't go into too much detail on this one since it's long for one thing, and it's not technically a Blind Guardian album, as only Hansi and Andre worked on it, and only Hansi actually appears on the album. For this reason, the Legacy of the Darklands was actually released as the Blind Guardian Twilight Orchestra.
And then, for a moment, it seemed they could survive. Seven seas were open. Will it ever be the same? Will I touch this final flame? Will I be on my own? Or is there anyone who knows?
And I do have to mention their 2020 Christmas single, a cover of Slade's Merry Christmas Everybody, since it did get a wacky music video where the band is all dressed like Slade.
So here it is, Merry Christmas, everybody's having fun. Look to the future now, it's only just begun.
Blind Guardian's most recent full-length album was 2022's The God Machine.
Now it's time to pray. I told you she's
Maybe in some sense, they just needed to get that orchestral album out of their system, because The God Machine overall is pretty great. This one is a little more stripped down compared to the previous two Blind Guardian albums, with a return to focusing on aggressive guitar riffs. And yet, there's still plenty of intriguing songwriting throughout the album, and no shortage of excellent choruses. And everything else that makes up Blind Guardian is still there too, including the big backing vocals. But for me, the God Machine does a better job of balancing those elements and bringing them in where they're most effective.
Save us, set us free, sky dancer, down where the violent shadows breathe, hiding the underworld, sky dancer, hide where the
Plus, the guitar playing is just as fantastic as it's always been, with catchy, expressive solos highlighting the tracks. Several songs got promotional videos, which are mostly straightforward performance or studio shoots, except for Life Beyond the Spheres, where the band are all Men in Black types. And Architects of Doom, with the band dressed as some sort of Illuminati monks.
It all starts again. See the fate of legacy. We're in the limelight of God. We're in the limelight of it all. We're in the limelight. It's your late, it's your stake, we're the depth.
Between the two, I like Architects of Doom better, especially with its excellent solo. And along with all that, there's also Let It Be No More, which doesn't have that minstrel sound to it, but is still a really nice ballad. And that is Blind Guardian, one of Germany and power metal's biggest bands, and one that you need to dig into if you haven't already. Your homework is lengthy for this one, but worth it. Check out Battalions of Fear, Follow the Blind, Tales from the Twilight World, Somewhere Far Beyond, Imaginations from the Other Side, Nightfall in Middle-earth, and A Night at the Opera. After that, I would personally go with A Twist in the Myth and The God Machine. I'll put At the Edge of Time and Beyond the Red Mirror in extra credit, although again, I know some people love these albums and they may rank higher up for you, so be sure to let me know what you think down below. I hope you enjoyed this look back at Blind Guardian. As always, thanks for watching and see you next time.